so I'm here to give a gender balance to the evening, but it looks like the other 30 women didn't get the invite, so thank you to all those women who are here. I'm Emily, I'm the Creative Content Manager at Ogadoon. We're a communications company, and I always feel really bizarre at times being at events like this because I don't have a pure tech background. All of my business career has been working in tech, whether that's consumer or at the moment with startups or scale-ups, but my academic background is actually medieval. So I have a master's in medieval studies, so that's Latin, paleography, historiography, history of art. You know, anything about 1,000 years old is my real comfort zone when I'm not at work. So there's a lot about tech that I come very much from a consumer perspective, which is a little bit about what I'm going to be talking about tonight. There's an app for that, but is there an audience? So, here we go. First of all, we're going to think like Russians. Not as in a trip to Salisbury, who I hear have a fantastic spire, and I will be jumping on the nearest coach to see. Often there are challenges in tech which get complicated really quickly. And some of the code that I see, I spoke to some of you earlier, my brother's a sysadmin, some of the code he sees, he looks at it and thinks, oh my gosh, it could have been a lot simpler than this. They managed to tangle themselves in a knot because they've gone off in so many directions that actually the code really could have just solved it. And I don't know whether you've heard the story, it's one of my favourite stories. In the space race in the 50s and 60s, the Americans were obsessed with the idea of note-taking in space. They wanted to do lots and lots of studies up in space, especially on weightlessness and the lack of gravity, but they were really stressed out because they thought fountain pens, gravity, not going to work. And so they spent arguably hundreds of thousands, probably closer to $1 million today's money, on developing the biro, which is a pen that can work this way up and this way up and this way up. It doesn't need gravity at all. Russians took a pencil and saved themselves agonizing hours in test labs trying to recreate weightlessness on Earth to see if the biro would work. And that's one of my favorite stories about how tech can, and I apologize in advance, can get a little up itself. Because the problem becomes so fascinating. We work with a lot of companies moving from startup to scale up, and usually it's developers or engineers who find a problem and they think, oh, I can fix that. They are really excited about it, they become surrounded by like-minded people who also want to solve that problem, and they kind of look up, usually about 2 years later, and go, oh, we haven't been paid in like ages, have we? Did anyone get? I haven't got paid. So we're going to need money to keep going, aren't we? And they suddenly realise that actually talking to investors about what they're doing is very different to talking to other techies. And actually the investors often go, yeah, I don't get it, and I don't know why you're creating it. I don't get what you're solving. I just don't get it. I'm seeing some little sad nods and chuckles. We're working with a company at the moment that's going through Series A, and they had a meeting with their current board, and everyone on the board has been with that company for about a year, 18 months, and they ended the presentation that said, that's our plan for the new investors, and everyone clapped. And they said, any questions? So I said, yeah, you know, we've really supported you, we really love your passion and your values. I just don't really get what it is that you do. And you can just see the hearts all sinking on the table like, okay, but I've literally been talking about this for 18 months, and could you please not have mentioned this 18 months ago? But it's a real challenge. There's a lot of design for design's sake. I know there's fear now in some of your eyes. I'm not out to like cut your jobs, I promise. But technology being incredible isn't often enough, because who's going to use it? I'm not going to look at the Dyson guys because you've got that sorted, you're fine. You can just zone out for like the next 10 minutes. Oh, we'll speak later, or we'll speak later, potentially. Especially with apps. People reckon about 90–95% of apps are never used. As in like the download once, go, oh okay, yeah alright, and then forget. Or even worse, open it, can't work out how to use it in the first 10 seconds, delete it. Has anyone done that? And you're the people that should know, you know? So I think it's fascinating, and it's what I'm going to be talking about in a bit more detail, is Are we designing for design's sake? Are we designing because the code is fun? Are we designing because I see a problem, I know how to solve it? Or am I designing because actually there is some poor bloke or woman at the end of it who's actually going to have to use it? I couldn't find a good quality video for this, so I've just got a screenshot. Do you remember the advert? It was an HSBC advert about 5-10 years ago, where they talked about a washing machine company that suddenly got like thousands of orders in a very small town in India, and they had no idea why. And so they sent one of their sales managers. I couldn't find it. If you can find a good quality version, emily@orgadoon.co.uk, it gets me in stitches every time I think about it. And he goes there, and he's like, why do you love our washing machines so much? I mean, you know, they're great, I'm the sales manager, but this is really bizarre. And this guy at the restaurant is very proud, welcomes him back, and they're mixing orange juice in it. And they found it's the best way to make orange juice, because the motion is so good. Thank you! It's just the funniest advert. At HSBC we're doing it, you know, the world's local bank. But I love it because so much of technology is used for something completely different. Poor old Thomas Edison, bless him. He had no idea what he's letting himself in for. And even though that seems like a very archaic and old problem, that still happens now. There are tons of bits of technology that either weren't designed for a purpose at all, were designed for an audience that actually didn't care, or are now used by people who have no idea what the original intention was. And that's kind of sad, because it can cost between, I mean, you guys might know this better than I do, but from the people I've spoken to and the people that we've worked with, 20, 25, 30k minimum to develop an app that you want to launch on a commercial scale. And that's a lot of money to spend if you don't have investors yet, and if you're hoping to recoup that on a 99p app that 95% of people will delete before they use it. So actually working out what your target audience actually needs, and not like, oh, I'm pretty sure someone like me might have this problem, is going to be a lot more beneficial for you right from the outset. Rather than what we see with most of our clients, which is when they come to us and they say, we've got this amazing app. And most of the time it is amazing. And they go, this is what it's going to do. And I go, okay, who? And I won't name one particular company, but they are represented in the room. They totally got it. They understood their target, and it was so wonderful working with them, because they were like, okay, this is what it does, this is who needs it, this is my market research, this is how I'm going to and we were like, great. Because that is like 1 in 100 for us. And every now and again we have the very awkward conversation of, we will support you no matter what, and you are more than welcome to pay us, but I don't see how this is going to work, because I don't think there's an audience. And at Orgadoon we're very clear that we want to be politely blunt, and we often are. I don't see the point in you spending money trying to market this until we work out actually what it's going to do and how it's actually going to fix a genuine need. So, most of the time you can do this in 2 ways. I have a genius idea. Let's go and find my audience. Now this sometimes does work. I'm sure there are plenty of geniuses in the room. I won't ask you to put your hands up. It's a little harsh. But sometimes it's a case of going, okay, who's going to face this challenge? I've understood the problem, I've understood the solution, now I've got to find the type of person who faces this problem. Are they technology literate? I had a really fun chat with someone who was pulling together an app which was VR for the elderly. And I said, that is great, but I think you've got an uphill climb. I think you're a little early to market. If you're not technology literate, I'd recommend not using an app. That's just a little piece of advice from me to you. App literacy isn't technology literacy. My mum, bless her, she can use a printer, she can use a laptop, and she's just about worked out how to take photos on her phone. I don't think she'd know an app if it, punched her in the face. But she's technology literate because she can do those things. So again, yes, tons of people could face the challenge that you're solving, but are they app literate? Or is actually part of your launch going to be app education, which I'm telling you now is an uphill struggle, even for those who are technology literate. Then how can I reach them? And that's very much a funnel. If you start off with, are they app literate? Who's they? Who is actually going to face that problem? The other way around you can do it is I have a captive audience, what's their problem? I prefer this way around because that's just the way my mind works. I don't come up with the genius ideas, I have to know the people, and then I can think of ways to work with them. So, what does their day look like? What challenges do they face? So, what's preventing them from excelling? What are their success blockers? Is it traffic, if they commute regularly? Is it the weather? Is it lack of knowledge of nutrition for athletes? If you have a really specific audience in mind, their problems become really, really obvious really, really quickly. It's really useful if you're that audience. It's not essential, but it is really, really useful. It saves you a hell of a lot of time. What restricts them without them knowing? Do not have children, but I have a goddaughter who's 2 and I attended her birthday party on Saturday. Do not recommend. I don't think, I don't have children, so, this isn't something I've experienced. I feel like I've experienced it now. There was a lot of under 2s in one place. And sitting as a childless person, we spent 2 hours opening presents, 2 hours tidying up from presents, 2 hours sorting out tantrums about presents, and then all of those hours were covered with parents going, I haven't had enough sleep, I'm so tired, what's my name? I'm sure I had my pen somewhere, but I've got to write down this is Ben's toy, where's Ben? Ben isn't my child, why am I looking for Ben? And I'm sitting there with Kate like, this is a whole new world. What restricts them without realising? Is it inability to understand pensions? My dad's a pensions advisor. I got my first pension nest thing sorted out last month. I didn't realise, despite growing up in an environment where pensions are talked about all the time, that's something I had to do myself, had to do in a different way. I don't know that I don't know that thing. Is it potentially misunderstandings? We're in Runway East, that's where our office is, and bless them, they didn't design the building, it's not their building, it's a co-working space with offices, and I can hear what's happening 3 offices down, because the installation is 0. That's just a lack of knowledge. If you don't know, you don't know that you don't know. So what is the challenge? What is the problem? What is something that your audience that you know really well is facing? Now, from my perspective and from what I've seen in the marketplace, it always comes down to time. People want to, the only thing you can't buy is time, and any app that is intended to save someone time is usually much easier to sell. But time is very specific. Is it time finding X, time going Y? Without knowing, there's no point designing an app, there's just not, sorry. Wouldn't we all like to have one of these? Someone comes to you with a problem you can already solve. Those are the best kinds. Before I worked with businesses, or in businesses, I was a freelancer. I freelanced for a year and a half, and my favourite clients are the ones where I essentially worked with their industry loads. I did tons of stuff in dentistry in America, weirdly. Dentists in America have a hard time, so they need lots of marketing for some reason. I worked with a lot of shampoo companies based in Israel. I have no idea why. Red Sea, maybe, I don't know. But once you work with one, you understand the second, the third is easy, but the 4th time you're laughing, well, not exactly laughing to the bank, but close enough. And for developers, when someone comes to a problem that you know the solution already, golden. And my second favourite one, the client comes to you asking for a solution you're already developing. I'm sure we can find some time in my hectic schedule to solve your problem, Mr. Client. We'd all love one of those. They're rare, sadly. Unless you're experiencing this every day, in which case I would like to hear from you, because you have worked out something incredible. Or you go viral. Angry Birds, anyone? Who would have thought? Who sat down in a design meeting with like birds that are angry? And everyone goes, oh, yes, there's a market for this. No one. I don't think anyone thought that Angry Birds would become the phenomenon that it was. I mean, I don't know if you remember when Angry Birds stopped selling and there were phones that still had it on. People were selling these phones for like tens of thousands of dollars in America because it still had the old version of Angry Birds on. It's just bizarre. Like, even as someone who works in that world, it was insane. None of us could have predicted it. Again, if you're working on something like that you think is going to go viral, get in touch to work with you. If you don't get it right at companies or apps fail pretty hard. Here are some of my favourite failures from the marketplace. All right? Really hoping that no one in this room has ever worked on this. Did a little bit of LinkedIn stalking, cannot tell. So this is a gamble for me. All right? So if you did ever work on one of these, I apologise, but you messed up. So,
do you need an app for LinkedIn stalking everyone in the room?
could we do that? Could we do it in GraphIQL? Because that would be great. We get a demo going.
Well, if you don't need offline access.
Right. Here we go. Everpix. Anyone remember Everpix? There's a reason for that. So Everpix was really, really clever. It was a photo organisational tool. So it linked in with the photos already on your phone or your tablet, and then you could organise it by colour or date or location or people in it. It was meant to be like the next big thing. They raised $2.3 million, which is more dollars than I've ever raised. And they went bankrupt about 2 months later. Not the greatest win. What was their failure? They didn't invest anything in sales or marketing at all. They didn't have a single person working in those departments, so they had no market research, they had no idea who they were selling to, they had no idea that actually quite a lot of technologies already offered most of their functionality, because they hadn't done any research. They just had an idea and they were going to do it, and they didn't care who else was doing it. Do not recommend.
It's not the actual logo.
Yeah.
That's another problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's another workshop from me, which I'm also available for, but Halo. Remember Halo? Anyone remember? Halo was this great idea that you could hail taxis through an app. Halo didn't work for one really good reason. It was about 5 years ahead of Uber, and despite getting $100 million of investment, they went bankrupt in 2013 because their launch site was New York City, and only 4% of taxi drivers had mobile phones. So there wasn't really a market for it from the point of view of the suppliers. Tons of people wanted to actually hail a cab, and people still do. That's why Uber is so great, and Lyft kind of still works, etc. But unfortunately, they hadn't really understood that they had two audiences. And although one of them was great, the other one wasn't really there. Yik Yak. Anyone remember Yik Yak? Give me a hands up. You remember Yik Yak? Yeah, there's a few of us. Yik Yak closed in 2013. And the reason that Yak failed was not because it didn't understand its audience, but because eventually it couldn't give its audience what it wanted because it didn't catch up. So at the beginning, the idea was Yik Yak, you could give messages that were essentially anonymous. And you could declare stuff or confess stuff, and it was all very like sharey, a bit like Snapchat. Only the problem with Yik Yak is that you weren't anonymous. Bit awkward. And they got this huge cyberbullying row that erupted up, and they couldn't provide the security and the protection that its audience needed. And so its audience just left the app in droves because they were mostly teenagers who wanted to share things that were really personal in a safe environment, and it was not safe. So they went bankrupt as well. And my last and favourite, Google Wave. Any remember Google Wave? There we are, Google Wave. So,
It's supposed to be so good.
Google Wave, complete disaster, bless them. I went to a talk a couple of years ago by Anna Hyatt, whom she was with Google for 12 years, and she was instrumental in helping to run a lot of the team's communication internally, because Google just became such a behemoth that they just weren't talking to each other properly, let alone their audience. And the trouble was with Google Wave is that nobody knew what it was for, and nobody knew how to use it, and no one had thought of telling anyone. So it just kind of happened, and then tons of people were like, huh, Google Wave, what's that for? And Google said, oh, yeah, I don't know. It was a massive marketing disaster because no one really had any incentive to ever learn how to use it. But I kind of like Google Wave as an example because every single element within Google Wave from a technology perspective has been repurposed in Google Drive. Every single bit of code. And I quite like that Not in a kind of, let's fail guys, but there's a lot of times when the code is really exciting, the development is really exciting, you're creating something that you love, and actually the original intention for it might completely bomb. That doesn't mean the code is bad. It doesn't mean what you've created doesn't work. It just doesn't do the original function. Being able to learn and adapt from what you do is a good way of recovering. I'd recommend do the learning first. Then adapt your ideas and then create. It saves you a lot of time, a lot of money, and quite a bit of heartache, which I know all of you are worried about. So, if some, all, or none of this has made sense, please grab me. I'd love to chat. I'd love to learn more about you and what you're up to. One of the things that we do at Ogadoon is a program called Scale 90, which is specifically working with app developers and app companies to basically do this process with/for them. So by the time they launch, most of those kinks are ironed out. So if you're interested in chatting with me about that, please do grab me at the break, which is essentially now, / at the end. Thank you.